Hello and welcome to this edition of the Indiana Rock Machine. My name is Sly Rose. I am your host here at the Rock Machine, and we have a very special guest that I'm going to add to our screen here. Tonight, we're joined by Mimi Mapes. Mimi, thank you so much for joining us.
Wow, thanks for having me.
It's
Welcome.
it's fantastic to have you on board. And I told Mimi why I was so intent on having her appear here on the Indiana Rock Machine. We do share some common locations at certain points in time, but we never knew each other.
Mhm.
So I thought, boy, oh boy, it'd be great. And she just happened to be in a couple of very, very big bands in my lifetime. One of them was one of my favorite groups once I became legal to go see groups play in bars. And one of
I
them
never sorry.
and and she also played at one of the bars I used to work at in Bloomington. So we kind of worked together on the same nights, but we didn't know each other because I played records and they went up there and sang rock and roll. So thanks, Mimi, for joining us tonight.
Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Sly.
Oh, my pleasure. And it's great because we love the Indiana part, even though you may not originally start in Indiana. Where were you born anyway?
I was born in New York, but grew up in Chicago in Old Town, as a matter of fact,
Okay.
Old Town Park area.
So, for us people in the region, that's not too far of a stretch from the region area. It depends on what
Hmm.
time of day you go. It could be either 45 minutes or 3 hours.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
and you grew up then in the around the Old Town School of Music area, Old Town
Grew up
area. Is that
Old
where you
Town
grew up?
School of Folk Music. I grew up in Old Town, right on Wells Street, which was like the place where Second City was and Piper's Alley, and it was like the hippie hotspot to be at in the '60s, and that's when we lived there in the '60s. I remember the Democratic convention and tanks rolling down our streets in front of our apartment on their way to like Lincoln Park, where the protests were going on and stuff. Yeah, right in the
Yeah.
thick of it all.
Just don't run over me while I'm on my way over to Bazaar to go over and pick up
Ah,
something.
exactly. Or dear Frank's to get a good hot dog.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Hmm.
lots of great stuff going on in Chicago, that time of the year and or the time era, I should say. Um, because you grew up, in that area, I'm gonna kinda let the cat out of the bag. Well, I'd like you to tell me why you grew up in that area, and then I'll kind of, help along here. So why were you born in New York, and why did you grow up in Chicago
Um,
around the Old Town School of Music?
well, because my mom was a folk singer, and she had done her business in New York and decided it was time to get married and move to Chicago, and so we moved to Chicago, where she continued to, uh, be a pretty big folk singer. She was pretty
Yeah, and
big in the.
I'm going to share a picture of her. This is a picture of her from the Reprise era. Um,
Hmm.
and your mom's name obviously is Joe Mapes, and she
Yeah.
was quite a luminary in that genre
Hmm.
in the early 60s. People don't realize maybe that are the same age that grew up in the 60s. It might be a little before their time, but folk
Yeah.
music was really, really big
Oh,
in the
yeah.
United States. Huge.
Huge. Hmm.
And your mom was a major player in that whole scene. Um, recorded a lot. She was if people here are old enough to remember the TV show Hootenanny, Hootenanny, was a big folk, uh, type show that showcased all the up and comers in the folk, genre. And your mom rubbed elbows with a lot of very, very famous folk artists back there. Who are some of the people that you remember that your mom being around or that she told you that you were around?
Well, when she was first starting in the village, she was really good friends with, Peter, Paul, and Mary. She was Cass Elliott's roommate for a while. Um, Judy Collins. They all knew each other. Bob Dylan, Shel Silverstein. Everyone kind of hung out in that whole community. So, um, as a child, uh, I was exposed to a lot of those people. But as I remember coming home from grade school and I'd walk into the living room and Bob Dylan would be there sitting on, the couch, and there would always be guitars out at our house. It was really cool there. Whoever was in town playing whatever, for some reason they gravitate to my mom's house, and she'd make like a big pot of stew or whatever, and everybody would always be hanging out playing guitar. Um, Arlo Guthrie wrote the last verse of Alice's Restaurant on our back porch, and when we lived
Wow.
in the street. So that's the kind of thing I remember. I remember coming home to just a lot of people that were just normal people sitting around playing guitar and hanging out and eating stew and bread and just having a good time.
Alice's Restaurant, what a great album that is, and,
Hmm.
one of the radio stations I worked at back in the time, back in the day in Bloomington, in that sort of, era and in that part of the state, that radio station actually plays Alice's Restaurant on Thanksgiving Day.
Oh,
So,
yeah, almost every radio station does. That's awesome.
from
That's
beginning
great.
to end, all the way straight through. I don't
Hmm.
know if the FCC is gone easier on the regulations there, because back in the
Hmm.
day, you couldn't do that. Um,
Right.
so, that was designed to keep people from just playing a record and having everybody tape it, but, radio geek showing up here, sorry about that. So,
That's okay.
your mom actually wasn't just a kind of a one-trick pony, she was kind of a renaissance, person in the Chicago area, not
Oh
only
yeah.
doing the folk music, but I mean, she wrote some songs, for like the Association, the Monkees, Spanking Our Gang. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't realize that Spanking Our Gang kind of came out of the Chicago Old Town School of Music,
Hmm. Old Town School of Folk Music. Yeah.
folk
Hmm.
music. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, your mom was not only that, I mean, if that weren't enough, then she also, did some jingle work, which you and I have in common. And we're going to be talking about jingles a little bit later. But,
Yeah.
what do you remember about your mom's jingle output?
Well, it was the greatest. She worked at J. Walter Thompson and then Leo Burnett, like two of the big advertising agencies. And so she worked on a lot of big accounts, and Kellogg's was one of them. And so she did all the Kellogg's Raisin Bran jingles. She was the sun, and you can still see some of those commercials on YouTube. It's kind of cool. I discovered them a few years back, and so she wrote. She did jingles for Kellogg's. She did. Aunt Jemima waffles without the syrup is like spring without the fall. There's only one thing worse in this universe, and that's no Aunt Jemima at all. She was a
Fantastic.
great wordsmith, my mom. She could just put words together really well, especially for jingle writing. And I remember the perks of that, going into like a studio with her and watching her do, a little like a pickup line or something here or there. And we would also get a lot of product um, for free. And I remember I was one of the first kids. Gosh, this is going to age me, but I don't care. Back when Willy Wonka came out in the movie theaters, they started a Willy Wonka. Kellogg's started to make Willy Wonka chocolate bars, and it was like a chocolate factory. And I was the first one to get one of those chocolate factories with all the chocolate and the molds and the wrappers to make Wonka bars and all that stuff. And we get this
Nice.
huge box every Christmas full of Kellogg's whatever, all the new products and everything that was coming out. And she did that for years, and it was really cool. So that, yeah, she was an amazing writer, really very talented writer and
Didn't I
singer.
s didn't I see her, mention, like, one of those, that she did, she said, "Put the food on the table for quite a long time."
Yeah, the
I
Kellogg's
guess
brand commercials.
yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah, and they are
started.
out there. They are out there
Mhm.
because I watched them last night.
Yeah, they're out there. They're really cool to see. I love it. I love
So,
it.
yeah, and your mom being a wordsmith doing these jingles, um,
Hmm.
kinda led perfectly into her next gig, which was with the Sun Times. What was that?
Right. Well, I don't know how she managed this, but somehow she became the entertainment critic for the Chicago Sun-Times. And so she got to go and see and meet some of the greatest people and interview them. And one of the perks for me was being, a little kid going to Mr. Kelly's and hearing the jazz combo before the main act, who could have been whatever, and going to the Palmer House and seeing all these major stars as a kid. It was so cool because it really introduced me to jazz because they'd always have these amazing jazz combos play before the main act would go on. But I met people, and eating filet mignon, and I mean, I'm a kid, right? It's crazy, and
This is what
Crystal, this
everybody
and that.
does, right?
Yeah, everybody does this. Um, and then yeah, I get to go meet people like BB King and Tony Bennett and Harry Chapin and John Byrne and what was that his name? That I can't even remember. Some crazy. He's long dead by now, but he was a what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of he mimicked people.
Oh,
Can't
John Biner.
Biner, thank you very much. Yes, he
Mhm.
was an impressionist, John Biner. So yeah, and Mitzi Gaynor and all these crazy people that, who else knows about Mitzi Gaynor at my age, right? So
Mhm.
it was fun. It was great. And also Aaron Gold was a columnist back then. And I remember when I got one of my first gigs playing with the trio down on Rush Street, Aaron Gold put me in his column. And that was like huge that I was in, that I made Aaron Gold's column. I'll never
How
forget that. That was pretty cool.
how old would you have been then?
When I made his column, probably about 21, 22.
Nice. Very
Yeah.
good. Yeah, so, I mean, what do you say, honey? Let's go eat dinner with Tony Bennett tonight. Sure. We'll just go
Yeah,
meet at the Palmer House, or we'll go down to the Pump Room, and
yeah,
we'll eat dinner with them tonight.
exactly. We used to have brunch at Barbara Rush's house, and it was crazy. This actress, Barbara Rush, and she would stay at the Ambassador West, and we'd go to brunch there, and it would always be these showbiz people, and Kukla Fran and Ollie would be there to entertain the kids. I mean, it was like crazy stuff, but it was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool way to grow up, I must admit.
Yeah. And Steve Goodman, I think your mom pals with Steve Goodman too?
Really good friends with him. He was a great guy. He took me to my very first Cubs game. I'll never forget that. And yeah, really talented, really sweet guy that definitely left this planet way too soon.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. Um, you mentioned Shell earlier.
Mhm.
I heard a story that you might have been taken to the Playboy Club back when it was in Chicago. Was it in Chicago that you went to the Playboy Club, or the
Yeah, well,
Playboy
the
Mansion?
I actually worked at the Playboy Club when I was like 22 or 23, but this was the Playboy Mansion that I went to because my Uncle Shell, and I call him my Uncle Shell because he's not blood related, but I never knew my dad. And Shell was in my life ever since I was a baby. And when your mom says, "This is your Uncle Shell," then that's your Uncle Shell. So he's been my Uncle Shell. He was my Uncle Shell my whole life. But he would come in town, and yeah, we get to go to the Playboy Mansion. The first time was Christmas Eve to go pick him up and bring him back to our place in Old Town, because obviously he was alone and nobody was there, excuse me, at the mansion that night. And so I got the tour, and it was pretty amazing. I mean, that was an amazing, beautiful place. It's still there, but it's not. I think it's owned by the Art Institute or something
Mhm.
now. I'm not sure, but all kinds of things like secret panels where there would be this woodwork, and you'd push, like there'd be like twigs and berries carved in the woodwork, and you'd push a certain berry, and a door would open, and a
Ah,
staircase would go up to a special room, or there was the fireman's pole that led to the underground bar that you had to go down, and then you could see the people swimming. Um,
no
oh,
place is complete without a grotto.
yes,
I'm
this one
looking to
did
build
not
one
have
of
a
those
bar,
too.
but it had the underground bar. And I remember being a kid and not having a suit, wanting to swim. And Shell was like, "Well, just go take one of the suits out of the bunny suits." And of course, they fit me because they were like this big anyway. So, but it was fun, yeah. And I continued to go and visit every time he was in town. You'd go and you'd have to ring the security button and say, "Meet me here for Shel Silverstein," and they'd let you in. And the coolest thing about that place was that you could order, as a kid, you could order whatever you wanted to eat, and they would bring it right to you, no matter what it was, no matter what time of day. They had everything, all curtains blacked out, so you never knew what day it
Right,
was.
yeah,
But yeah, I
perfect.
remember being so excited that I could like order a cheeseburger whenever I wanted to, or it was
Yeah,
pretty cool.
cheeseburger at 9:30 in the morning, this is awesome.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So for those that are watching now, who don't know who Shell is, um, Shell wrote some great songs. He was also a great author, and he doodled quite a bit. He was a good artist too, right? He drew very well,
Amazing. Yeah,
and he
several
was,
books.
yeah, children's books. I mean, the whole gamut. Quite a poetry writer. He
Hmm.
also he also wrote one of my favorite songs personally to sing, and that it's Sylvia's Mother, by
Hmm.
Dr. Hook, and
Yeah.
another Dr. Hook song with the cover of the Rolling Stone, and
Hmm.
and
Excuse me.
For Chicago people or regionites like myself, the Unicorn, which was the theme song for Dr. Lester Fisher on
Hmm. On the
the
Ray Rayner
TV show
show.
Ray Rayner show, exactly. So he wrote that, and A Boy Named Sue for our country and western fans. He wrote that for Johnny Cash. And
Yep.
one of the interesting things about Johnny Cash is Johnny Cash appeared on one of the Hootenannies with your mother.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that one or not, but they were on
Yeah.
there
I
together.
know that I don't think I saw it, but I knew that they had known each other. Yeah.
So they are on one of the first broadcasts of Hootenanny.
Hmm.
Excuse me. So,
Interesting.
um, yeah, so that's your mom's story, and people, if you get a chance to go to YouTube and look up Joe Mapes, there's a lot of video out there. Some of it, when we watch TV when we were kids, the picture is just absolutely horrible. But there are some really good ones on there too. Where she's on with
Hmm.
Dennis James on some show that he did. So there's a nice
Yep.
clear shot of her singing there.
Hmm.
Lots of good material, so check that out.
Yeah.
Um, do you remember, kind of going from being your mother's child, which of course you are,
Hmm.
um, moving on to what was the first time on stage, or what was the first time that you actually got up and sang or got paid to sing? Do you recall anything like that?
Oh, well, there's a difference there to get paid to sing or got up and sing
Yeah.
because I used to get up and sing with my mom um, quite a lot when I was a kid, and I was fearless. I mean, I'd get up on stage at the Earl of Old Town, even by myself, and play a couple songs on guitar, and because it was such a comfortable place for me. I spent so many nights falling asleep with my head on the table, that my mom was playing there, or whoever was playing there that we were seeing. I mean, the Earl of Old Town is literally right down the block from us, so we went all the time. Um, and speaking of cheeseburgers, made like the best cheeseburgers in the world to this day, the Earl of Old Town. But that was probably the first place where I got up and sang in front of people. Besides doing, like, I started out doing theater and community theater. I did like the JCC theater for a long time up in Rogers Park. And I did Second City for a while. And so I love doing theater as well, but I found that I could make money more consistently if I became a singer. So I
Mhm.
kind of just went to that, and I think the first kind of thing I did was probably excuse me, trio work. Excuse me, on Rush Street, as I said. I worked with the Billy Gabor trio at Billy's and Blondie's and certain places on Rush Street. And then I started to get into rock. And that was like my first band, probably back in the early 80s. Gosh, I'm so old. I can't believe I'm the same age as old people. I mean, what's up with that? That's
Oh,
messed.
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, very crazy. But yeah, it was very nice to get paid to sing, paid to do something you love. And I went the total opposite direction of my mom's career because I was like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to do my own thing. So I started doing jazz, which I really loved and still love to do. But I was like, I'm too young to be singing Satin Doll and that stuff. I've got you under my skin. I wanted to rock, so that's when I
Mhm.
kind of started my transition towards. That's when I met Dr. Bop and started with them.
So I was just going to ask you, and what a perfect segue. It's like we sat and planned this all out in advance, but um, I'm not going to pull any curtain here and let the view see what's going on behind the curtain. But um, what got we talked about Chicago now. What got you from Chicago into Indiana? You
Dr. Bop.
mentioned Dr. Bop. So Dr. Bop was was one of my favorite bands to go see in a bar. I think it was probably at that time the best bar band because not only could the people in the band play very, very well and under duress because they were getting beer poured on them or they were wearing the worst tuxedos in the world or
That
just
they
a bunch
handpicked.
of course. But these people were just consummate professionals, but they were the most fun and they could have fun and still sound good. That was the secret. Because as a
Right.
musician, when you start having too much fun and there's too much beer flowing, you tend to get sloppy, and this band didn't.
Yeah.
So Dr. Bop was a Madison, Wisconsin band. That's where they started in the mid 70s, 74 or 75, somewhere in there. Then they kind of they kind of were managed out of Chicago. But
Mhm.
what got you into that band? How did you get into that band? Because I think that's what got you kind of into Indiana,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Well, I was in my 20s and living the single life. I was, like I said, I had worked on Rush Street, and Division Street was my hangout. Mother's, PS Chicago, and the Snuggery, which is where I first saw Dr. Bob. And I saw them, and I've always been kind of a ballsy kind of woman, and I just went up and I said, I'd love to sit in with you. And I ended up sitting in with them, and it just so happened that they were looking for another Melendez sister. At that time, they only had one, and the normal thing was two for them. So I sat in with them, and then they kind of hemmed and hawed. They wanted to give me the job, but they didn't because I looked totally different than the average Melendez sister, which was tall, thin, and brunette. And I was short, curvy, and blonde. And it just didn't fit, which has been a problem with me a lot of places. Aesthetically, I wasn't the right look for what they needed. But somehow my talent overcame that crap.
Mhm.
And they ended up hiring me. And the first time we went to the Vogue, um, I got hit in the head with a bottle, like just kind of tipped. Lonnie was throwing one. We had a bar on stage and a bartender, and they had a big one of those like fish nets or pool nets or whatever, and they would try and catch the bottles. Well, this one didn't get caught, and it kind of clipped me on the side of the head, and I was like, "Whoa!" I had to like go backstage for a second and just sit down, and then came right back out, and it was a crazy band to work with. Indeed, very crazy, but a lot of fun. A whole lot of fun.
Now, did you get to work for some of us people that are really aficionados of Dr. Bop and the Headliners? Did you get to work at all with Ina Anka?
No, Ina was before my time. Ina, and then the girl Linda that's in this picture here. I can't remember what her Melendez name was. Um, it escapes me right now, but she had a different Melendez name. For some reason, Mimi Melendez just seemed to suit because everyone else had like a different name. It wasn't their real name. Just like when I worked at Playboy, you didn't use your real name; they gave you a different name. So, but I was Mimi Melendez, and yeah. So I didn't work with Ina, but I worked with Ned and Lonnie and Dr. Bop, the original, Newt Bop, and Cleveland St. James, and you can actually see Michael Reed in that picture, who was a member of Roadmaster, which was a big
Ah.
indie band. He's there next to the keyboard player there. He was in Dr. Bop for a little while. That's how I met him. And he later was in Henry Lee Summer with me as well.
So you've ruined it for me and probably a lot of other people because we always thought that the Foray de I can't even say it with a straight face. The Foray de
Parade
Monte
de
Cristo or
Right.
eh,
Was
that
his real
wasn't his real
name?
name? I don't
No.
think so.
Sorry. No, that was Ned. That was Ned.
Yeah, and Ned, you mentioned Ned and Lonnie. Ned and Lonnie both passed away recently. Had you
No.
heard? Were you ever in contact with them after
Yeah.
you left the
As
band?
a matter of fact, when I first moved back from LA, I moved to just north of Chicago with my sister in Deerfield, and got in touch with Ned, and we went and had dinner, and then he had a gig that he wanted to do, that was like under the guise of Dr. Bob and the Headliners, and he wanted me to come and sit in and do this gig with him downtown. Excuse me. And I went, and it wasn't really a Dr. Bob gig, but it was fun to sit in with him again and play. And that was pretty much the last time I saw him. And then when I heard that he had passed, I was just shocked. It just came out of left field. He seemed really healthy to me, but I know there were some crazy wild men back then when we were in Dr. Bob, and I could just imagine because they started out, like you said, in Madison in the 70s.
Mhm.
So rock and roll lifestyle sometimes can get to you after a while.
Yeah, the Dr. Bob Facebook page is pretty interesting because there's a lot of people who are posting there that used to be the roadies, and they would talk about they would they'd load into the bar, they'd do the show, clean up all the beer, get the stuff put away, go home, get home about 4 o'clock in the morning, then go do it again.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing.
You know
So
what?
what kind of
I'll let you in on something that's really
okay,
kind
good.
of disgusting, but it was a Dr. Bob secret. And I found this out. Thank God I didn't find it out the hard way because there are stories of girls that did find it out the hard way. Um, the Vogue, when we played the Vogue, like you said, it was crazy packed. I mean, it was a hugely popular band. Wherever we went, it was packed. So just trying to make it to the bathroom from backstage was like intense, just to weave in and out of all those people. So the guys never went to the bathroom. They used beer bottles.
Oh boy, face plant.
Yeah. They used beer bottles and they would line them behind the curtain of the Vogue, of the back curtain. And sometimes they would not make it out of the dressing room. And I hear tell that there was a time that some fan came back and, took that bottle of beer and went for a big old swig. And
Oh.
yeah, rock and roll.
Well, we're going to be talking to Steve Ross, who owned the Vogue.
I love Steve Ross.
So
He's the
we're going to
best.
ask him about that. We're going to ask him about that if he got any litigation because of a night after Dr. Bob.
Oh man, I'm telling you, it could well, it wasn't pleasant. At times it could be very odorous. Let's just say that.
But what a fun group of guys
Great
and the
guy.
Melendez sisters. How many Melendez sisters do you have? Do you have any idea?
I do not. I think another Indiana girl who I had done a couple of jingles with, Chris Stone, ended up becoming a Valendez sister after I left. So that's Linda, Chris, myself. And I've seen pictures of a couple other girls. I must have at least, Mama was busy. So it's hard for me to remember how many sisters I have because we're
A large
scattered all over the place.
a large group, definitely.
Exactly.
And
Someday we
um
should have a reunion. Yeah.
exactly. I do know Sarah Flint. She was in Count Bop, I know um with the guys. And
Oh,
and she shares something in common with you. She was
I
on a
know.
Mellencamp record,
The same
and
one.
so and I used to back in the day when I DJ'd, we didn't get paid anything
Hmm.
per se. So I also worked at a Brad's Bagels in Bloomington. I also did those radio spots for them, but
Uh,
uh, she worked next door in the Wooden Nickel Records. So I remember talking to her about she was either going to go do that or she had done that or something. So
hmm.
it's amazing how kind of all these things come together and different people who are Melendez sisters end up singing on a Mellencamp album. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that she was a Melendez. I had no idea. I remember that she got the song that was the hit, and I was so pissed. I mean, I love the song that I'm on, but she got the hit. She got to sing on ROCK in the USA, and I was like, oh, I
And
wanted to sing.
you got minutes to memories, which is a great
Yes,
song too.
I love that song.
How did you get we're going to tie this all together with the Hoosier thing. How did you get from Dr. Bop kind of on the way to our next group, Henry Lee Summer, but how did you get into the Mellencamp? Since we're on Mellencamp, how did you get that song?
Well, it was really funny because ever since I had moved to Indiana, people knew that like one of my main goals was to try and hook up with Mellencamp because I thought, my voice would really suit his voice, and I thought we would complement each other, and I really wanted to work with him, and I thought, oh, now this is my chance. And everyone knew that, my band members knew that. So one morning after a gig, I got a call at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm still in bed. And I roll over and answer the phone, and it's John Mellencamp. And he's asking me if I want to come and sing on his album and if I could drive out to Bloomington that day. And I'm like, yeah, right, John Mellencamp. I said, come on,
Right.
guys, stop goofing around. I'm tired. I'm going back to sleep. And I hung up on him.
Oh no.
Yeah. And then he called me back, and actually it was his manager, and he said, no, this is really him, this. And I'm like, who the hell expects John Mellencamp to just call them one morning and say, you want to come and sing with me? So of course I didn't think it was real. Um, so they just offered it, said, do you want to come down and sing this? And I think I got it through Johnny Casella, who was his sax player, also a friend of mine. But also I remember Mellencamp coming to see us one night at Jake's in Bloomington. And I remember him sitting there, and it wasn't too long after that I got the call. And when I finally realized it was him, I went out there and, of course, did that. And also he had me sing on a track of James McMurtry's album, which he was just producing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the first thing he said to me when I walked in is, wow, you could be a real bitch in the morning. Like, yeah, well, sorry. I
I
didn't
wasn't
know it
expecting
was
a
you.
call from JCM today.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, it was just one of those random things that you live for, as a
Mhm.
musician. You live for those moments, those lucky moments where you just get a really amazing break.
That's great because Crystal Talaferro, who we're going to be talking to sometime in the near future,
She's
she went from Kilo, the band playing Kilo, and John Mellencamp had come to see her play at Jake's, which is where I was working at the time. So it
mhm,
was kind of like a magic place, all except for me being stuck
yeah.
there. But a lot of people had some great stories from Jake's, and I got another story I'm going to share later, but not here at this show, but in a
Mhm,
different
mhm,
episode. But
mhm.
the people from the office, the Mellencamp office, would come into Jake's, and we got friendly with some of the people that worked in the office there.
Yeah.
So it was really, and that was a magical summer too, because all the people that were coming into Bloomington. So we had like 2 or 3 years in a row. We had REM there. We had Lou Reed
Mhm.
there. We had all this stuff going on at the same time. And it was just a
Yeah.
magical, magical time to be in Bloomington.
Yeah. It sure
And
was.
knock on wood, I was so fortunate then that I was on the radio then too. So it was such a fortunate time to be, we could talk about
Mhm.
and I would get Paper and Fire. I'd get the advanced copy of that because I worked at a radio station. So we
Yeah.
would make a card of it, and then I would take the record to Jake's, and we would play probably the first time people had ever heard Paper and Fire or Cherry
Wow, that's
Bomb or stuff
super
like
cool.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, that's just the kind of stuff and I'm not saying it for my own, tooting my horn, but I'm just saying that's the kind of situation we were in then. It
Sure.
was
Well, yeah. It
magic
was it
time.
was just that time. It was a magic time. 85, I think I moved to Indiana in 85 and left in 90. And those were some of the greatest times of, my life. Really, really, the patio was open. We play at the Vogue, like I said about the Bluebird, walking over to Jake's. We'd walk over to the patio. Henry didn't play the patio. We played the Vogue, but we'd always walk over to the patio, either after our gig or during a break or whatever. It was just such a great time. The indie music scene is very underrated. And a lot of my friends, Chicago, New York, and LA, they're like, what are you doing in Indianapolis? I'm like, sorry, but there's a great music scene here. There really is, and it's not LA and it's
Mhm.
not New York, so
That's what makes it cool.
exactly. There's a
Yeah.
lot of really, really talented people here.
So
Really.
tell me about the leaving of Dr. Bop. What made you leave Dr. Bop, and then how did you get to Henry Lee?
I think after a while of playing with Dr. Bop, I ended up moving to Indy because I was coming here like 2 weekends a month, and I was living in Chicago at the time, and I thought, well, I'll just move to Indy. I made a bunch of friends here. So I moved here, and during that time, um, I heard rumor that Henry was looking for a singer. So I somehow he got my number. We got in touch with each other, and I remember going to his house and auditioning for him, and just getting the gig. And from that point on, I wanted to leave Dr. Bop. It was very much a limited genre of what I could
Mhm.
do, and I really wanted to stretch out and do more. Um, and Henry gave me that opportunity. Besides just singing backups for him, he featured me a lot. And when we first started out, just being a band before the whole signing extravaganza thing happened. But yeah, so I auditioned for him, and that was that. I pretty much just got into the band. We started working the clubs, and it was just like Dr. Bop. It was like packed houses everywhere we went. So it was super cool. He was like
What year
the
would
dude at the time.
that have been that you started with
That
Henry
would
Lee?
have been, I started with Henry probably in 85.
85.
Probably,
Okay.
yeah, 85 or 86. Probably 80, the later part of 85. That's when I
So
moved here.
I'm looking at this picture and I'm zoning in on the 1985-ish hair. So I think you're right there.
Oh,
Um,
definitely the big hair. Well, you can't see mine there, but yeah, you could definitely see like on the Arsenio Hall show and stuff. Oh my goodness. Big, we all had big hair back then. Lots of Aquanet.
so who's in this picture? Who's in this picture that we have?
This is that's Donnie Van Zant, one of the famous Van Zant brothers. This is 38 Special. So that's me hugging on Donnie Van Zant because we like to wear hats, and he was pretty
Mhm.
cool. And Henry Leanne is behind us. She was one of our backup singers. Doug Sizemore, who's right behind Henry. No, that's our guitar player. Yeah, Doug. He is has since gone on to play with Reba. He's been with Reba McEntire for, I want to say, probably at least 30 years. Um, to this day, he still plays with Reba. And those are the other guys that were in 38 Special at the time.
So fortunately, you sent us some other pictures. I kind of recognize this guy, but why don't you tell us who that is?
Stevie Ray, man, he was the coolest. We were lucky enough to play. The weird thing about being on tour is you go and you play to these like, you know, 20,000, 30,000 seat places when you're opening up for a big band. And then on your off nights, you might go and do a smaller gig, a club gig, or luckily we were able to do 2 gigs where we opened up for Stevie Ray. Excuse me. And it was the his last summer before his accident. And he was just amazing. I mean, mesmerizing just to watch on stage. And I remember he one of my favorite tunes of his, which is Riviera Paradise. He would play towards the end of the show, and he'd come out and he sat on the edge of the stage, just sat on the stage, with his like legs hanging over the stage, and he played Riviera Paradise, and I ended up using that song in my wedding, which was kind of cool. But
Hmm.
yeah, he was just a really super sweet guy, and so devastated to hear of the way he passed after he finally got his life together. It seems to happen to a lot of people,
Yeah.
unfortunately, when they finally get it together and then they're taken somehow. And it was just heartbreaking. But I'm so glad I got the chance to work with him and meet him.
Looks like another group of people with big hair here.
Big hair.
Who's going?
That's the Doobie Brothers.
Aha.
The Doobie Brothers. We did a couple tours with them, and the nicest guys you would ever want to know. So sweet. You wonder sometimes how these people are gonna, be with you, and there's certain things when you open up for a major act, like are they gonna give you full sound? Because they can do that. They can hold back sound. Are they gonna give you lights? Are they gonna give you, you know, the bells and whistles? And they can hold back if they want to, but these guys were great. I mean, they gave us everything. They used to come out and sing with us on our set, and a couple of the guys would come out and sing backups with us, and I would go and sing with them on their encore. Um, the greatest guys, really, really nice. We also toured with Chicago, and they were great too. We never got a band picture with them, though, unfortunately, which is really a drag because I wish we had. Um, but they were really nice people too. I mean, these are people that are kind of like your family, even the
Hmm.
crew. You know, you tour with them for like 1 or 2 months, and you eat with them every night, and you eat with them every morning, and you hang out, and for your 40 minutes, which is what an opening act would normally get. And the rest of the day is revolved around being on tour and being at the venue. And I got to say, we worked with some of the nicest people. Also, Richard Marx was really a cool guy
Hmm.
we toured with for a while. But yeah, I'd say the Doobies in Chicago were just sweethearts, really great guys.
I love things that are gold, and this looks like this is a great big platter of gold here. What is this gold platter that you're holding on to?
Actually, it's platinum.
Oh,
I must
mistake. I'm
correct.
sorry. Wah
It's okay.
wah.
It is wah wah. You can actually see it back there too. It's right there on my wall. That
How
is
about
my
that?
multi platinum. See the three covers of Scarecrow for singing on the Scarecrow album. No idea I was going to get that. I showed up to do some session work at TRC one day, and Alan Johnson, who's an amazing guy, wonderful engineer that's been there forever, um, said, "Hey, we got something for you." And they had sent it to me there, I guess, and just blew me away. I
Nice. What a nice
was
surprise.
so excited. I was hoping it was going to be one of many.
Yeah, of
So
course. Of
far,
course.
yeah. But I'm just grateful to have been a part of that, and really grateful that they even thought of me to send me one.
Did
So that
this
was
guy have anything to do with it?
well. That's Larry Crane, and he is the backbone of Mellencamp as well. They started that band together, and he wrote a lot of the most famous licks and the most famous songs. That's all Larry, and he is one of the sweetest, kindest, nicest men. And last time I had seen him, we played Farm Aid, and that was right before I left for LA. But after I moved back to Chicago, I started to come and do session work every once in a while. And Larry and I were thinking of doing a duo at that time. So I came and we did some recording over at the Static Shack, and we put a little video together, and we did a couple gigs together. And I adore him. He's just super talented guy. He's like hugely. I mean, he's written some of the most famous licks you could think of, especially Indiana music, but just entirely for John Mellencamp. He was like his right hand guy, and just one of the sweetest guys I've ever worked with.
Seems like
Just
a very nice, down to earth fellow who really, it's what takes a song and makes it into a hit is not always up to the songwriter. It's
absolutely.
what you can if you can
It's a
put a lick on the beginning.
collaboration.
Yep.
Hmm.
If you can take those bones and you can put a lick at the beginning, a lick at the middle, and a lick at the end, that really is the hook.
Yeah,
And that's what he was really, really good at. Still
yeah,
is.
he sure was. He's still a great guitar player. We used to do this. We didn't do it this last year, but for the past couple of years, we've done this jam at his house. That he married a really wonderful lady, and they had the wedding out at their place, and then we had this jam that we just did like every year with a lot of the Mellencamp people and Johnny G, who's Mellencamp's bass player, who used to be with Henry, and all these other people, and Larry and myself, and Dane Clark, who's John's drummer and is in a band I'm with also. I'll go out to Larry's, and we set up, and we have a real good time, have a party.
That that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'd like to put like the Henry Lee Summer era together here.
Okay.
So you said 85-ish is when that started for you, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
then your last year there was, I'm going to bookend this and then I'm going to go into the middle. So what was your last year with Henry?
90. My next to last gig with him was Farm Aid 90, because I had just moved to LA, and I flew back to do Farm Aid. And that was pretty much decided that that was going to be our last gig because they didn't want to fly me back and forth for gigs. But they did fly me back for one more gig after that. So yeah, pretty much 90.
So in Bloomington, back in the day, because I worked at Jake's, so we saw Henry Lee come through there all the time,
Hmm.
as much as we could get him in there.
Yeah.
And there was, once again, magical time. This is where he went from the guy that was putting out records on, I don't remember, what was this, a Big Fun record company,
Yeah. Time
something
for
like
big
that. Did
fun.
I pull that out correctly?
Yes.
Wow. So a Big
Uh-huh.
Fun record company was kind of like a obviously local type thing.
Right.
And what do you were there when it went from local record to record deal, Henry, right?
Right. Mhm.
What 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 time was that? What year do you think that might have been? And how did things change from the day before to the day after?
Well, it was interesting because Henry Lee has gone through several incarnations of band members. And when I first joined, we were just a cover band that was really, really popular and playing, but we were also playing some of his hits from, or some of his Indiana hits, some of his cuts from his first record, um, prior, I think, to when I was with
Mhm.
the band. And then we started doing more originals, and his he had a manager, James Bogart, who was constantly pushing for a deal. And all next thing I know, we're performing for record execs, and deals are in the works, and band members were changing, which was a drag. We went through quite a lot of band members, and I still think the best incarnation of Henry Lee was the first incarnation. It was myself, Rick Bennick, Michael Reed, both from Roadmaster, Mike Organ, who was an amazing drummer, who lives out in LA. Um, yeah, that was the best incarnation of the band. I think Mark Orman, I think, was our bass player. We had bass players from Blondie. We had a bass player, all great guys. Um, Bass player from Joe Jackson. Um, that's the thing, though, when you kind of get caught into that record deal thing, you kind of like get swept up in the sparkle and the glitter, and all of a sudden it's like, hey guys, let's push for this, and we're all going to make it together. And then all of a sudden they make it, and then all of a sudden people aren't in the picture anymore, and
Mhm.
people are being replaced with other people just because they have a name or a place or so. I saw some changes in the band. To tell you the truth, I was the only, myself and Mike Organ were the only original members that ended up staying throughout all that stuff. There,
Wow, I did not know that. Hmm.
oh yeah, we had a great guitar player from Nashville that ended up playing with Hank Williams Jr. And like I said, Doug Sizemore ended up with Reba McEntire, and um, uh, Lee Fox was with Blondie, and we had some great people. But the best nucleus of the band was the original band, in my opinion. So we went from, I think there's one picture, I don't think I sent it to you because we're all giving the finger. It was after a gig, it was our last gig, and we had our tour bus that pulled up that night. We were getting ready to leave for our first tour, and we had never had a tour bus before. And we're all backstage toasting with champagne and giving the finger simultaneously. And then next thing I know, we're on a bus and we're gone, and it was quite a different thing.
Do you remember where you went on that bus trip? Can you pull that out of the memory where you
I
guys went
think
on that
so.
bus?
And this was actually Michael Reed and Ricky Bennick were still in the band. We went to Destin, Florida, where we were a part of like uh, it was a closed circuit TV college spring break thing. And we played with Cheap Trick. And the thing about Henry, which was so cool, is Henry could go. He was just such a presence on stage, such a presence, and he
Mhm.
just endeared himself to you. He could go out in front of 20,000 people that had never seen him before, and by the third song, they were on their feet and going nuts because he drew you in. He was so freaking crazy and
Mhm.
all over the place and awkward and geeky and not about his looks, and it's just like craziness, and people just really latched onto that. And I learned a lot from him, how to be on stage and how, to just let go and be authentic. And that's what he was. He was so authentic that he really just could grab a crowd and take them over. It was
I
very impressive that way.
Yeah, and I remember, right before, and it might have been, I don't remember if you guys came back after that first tour and did small bars anymore, but I can remember there were nights at Jake's where it was just pandemonium, just
Mhm.
absolute pandemonium. And those were my best nights because I played the records between the band sets. So I had a crowd. It was like, all right, here we go. This is going to be awesome. And
Yeah.
those nights were crazy. I mean, just absolutely crazy.
So much fun. And to go from Dr. Bop, who did sold out crowds, to Henry Lee, who did sold out crowds, where I literally had to like push myself through a crowd just to go to the bathroom. But it was so exhilarating. I mean, it was just, I really lucked into some great situations, one right after another. And I was very lucky and really glad to be a part of that whole scene.
Well, I'm one of those people that say, I don't even know how to say it correctly, but it's not maybe not luck so much. When you have a string of success, it's not necessarily luck. It's just being prepared for your opportunity, and
That's true.
I think that's what that is.
Hmm.
So a lot of people say it's luck. No, it's just being prepared for the opportunity. When it comes up, you got it. And that's what's so cool about that. So you said you left the Henry Lee Summer Band. You were on Arsenio, right, with Henry
Hmm.
Lee. And any other TV shows did you do on that tour? Or
Nope, just Arsenio. He did David Letterman, but he did that by himself.
okay,
He didn't take any of us with him.
all right. I didn't want to share that scale then, huh?
I guess not. Guess not. He didn't want to put us up. I don't know what the thing was, but
Yeah, it is what it
yeah.
is.
But it was
So
fun, Arsenio, and that was a blast. Except for that the hair and makeup people, it was the first time I'd been in like hair and makeup. And they really did my hair like a huge box. I just was like, oh gosh. All right, well, this is Hollywood, so
this is where Amazon got their ideas for Christmas boxes, is just make it this big.
yeah.
So you went to after that, you went to LA, but did you
Hmm.
say, "Henry, I'm leaving," or "I'm gonna go," or every once in a while with bands, sometimes there's some of that headbutting that goes on.
Right.
Was it a good situation? Were you leaving a bad situation, or
Um,
you just wanted to go?
I wanted to go. There were lots of good and bad situations in Henry. I want to say it was a mixed bag of emotions that and lessons learned of how to let people treat you and not treat you. So I was ready at that point to leave, and I was ready to make the move. And there were people, we had just been on tour with um the Doobies for a long time in Chicago, and all those guys, Robert Lamb. I'll never forget on my birthday, these guys, we were on tour with Chicago, and they gave me a birthday party at like a five-star restaurant. And Robert Lamb gave me these amazing silver Aztec pin that I still have that I wear on my leather jacket. And all these guys had become friends, and they were like, Mimi, if you really want to try and pursue this, you ought to move to LA. You ought to think about moving to LA. So that was kind of always in my back pocket, thinking I wanted to move to LA. So I had put all my stuff in storage and started working to save money to drive to LA. I remember I was working at a convenience store down the street from where I lived in Broad Ripple, and just to save money for the gas to get to LA. And I remember closing up the store one night and I'm mopping the floor. And what comes on the radio? But wish I had a girl that walked like that. And I'm sitting there mopping the floor while
This
I'm on
sounds
the
familiar.
radio.
Yeah,
I'm like,
this sounds
oh,
really
something's
familiar.
wrong here. So, yeah, so I went out to LA and thought, I'm going to give it a shot. It's
So
a
where did
tough
you go?
place.
Did you have people out there? Was there
Yeah,
some place you could okay, that's good because it's
funny
tough to
enough,
go out
I
there and
had
go, "Here I
met,
am, everybody."
right, yeah, no, I had met, I'd become friends with a girl that Henry had become friends with when we were recording the album in New York, because I was the only person that actually got to be on his first album that he recorded in New York. Um, but um, what was I saying now? Let me have another glass of wine. Let me forget.
You were talking about, going out there by yourself, but you didn't. You had
Oh,
somebody out there.
yes, I had a roommate, a crazy roommate that had dated Henry and turned out to be a crazy person. My mom had known some people. Herb Cohen was a big folk manager back in the day, and he was a good friend of my mom's. And I met with him for lunch at the Rainbow on Sunset, and he got me a job at the Rainbow on Sunset, which was quite an experience.
I bet.
I met so many people there. I mean, talk about being in the thick of it, in the rock and roll history of Sunset Strip. I was a waitress and a hostess at the Rainbow, and that's where I ended up meeting my husband, my soon-to-be husband at that time. Who There was a jam down at the Viper Room, right down the block from the Rainbow, that used to happen every Thursday night. And back then it was called the Central. It wasn't called the Viper Room. It was before Johnny Depp had bought it.
Mhm.
And there was a jam, and a friend of mine that ran the jam brought him over to the Rainbow. This guy, and I was in the kitchen at that time, and the kitchen was like a cool place to work because there were only a couple booths, and they were usually for celebrities that didn't want to be in the mix in the thick of it. A lot of celebrities came in, they wanted to be seen, but a lot of people came back and didn't. Like John Belushi had his very last meal there in the kitchen at the Rainbow. It was a bowl of chicken soup, which they make the
Mm.
best chicken soup. So he brought this guy in, and we kind of just hit it off. I didn't have any real friends. So we kind of got together and decided we'd go see a movie. And from that point on, we were together. I ended up getting married 2 years later, and worked as a singer in different bands, trying to get in the scene. It's a very hard scene to get into. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
what kind of resume you have or what you've done. It's definitely who you know. I did all the hoity-toity China Club jams and that crazy stuff, and I ended up working at Universal Studios Hollywood as a tour guide and a tour guide trainer for 13 years.
Wow.
Yeah, which was another great experience, just to be on that back lot and be on working movie sets. And I've always been obsessed with that kind of stuff. So just ask me. I have a plethora of movie trivia in my brain that will never disappear, unfortunately. Or the tour. I could probably still recite it for you now.
That would
Um,
be interesting. We'll save that for another episode. Maybe we can just do the
yes,
whole
but it,
thing.
it was a lot of fun. And then I ended up singing at night. And like I said, I got married. I had my daughter, who is now 26 years old. Vey.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I spent 25 years out in LA. And then, as marriages do, sometimes they end, as mine did. And so I moved my daughter and myself back to the suburbs of Chicago where she could finish high school, and which she did. And then she immediately went back to California for college because she's like, screw
I don't
this
blame
winter
her.
stuff. Because she was like a California baby. She's like, I don't mind it to visit it, but I'm not about living in it. So she moved back to California, went to college, and that's when I started coming back and forth doing these sessions. And they just said, why don't you just move back here? And I was like, you know what? Why not? Because,
Well, the weather stinks in the wintertime.
yeah, well, it stinks in Chicago too. Trust me. It's
Oh, I
even,
know.
although I was doing some cool work in Chicago with this great 14-piece band with a horn section and three singers and having a lot of fun with them. But, I had some friends back here and some history back here. So I thought I could come back and kind of, work my way back into the scene, which is what I did.
So, you and your mom have something in common. I kind of have in common with you, and that's a lot of jingle work. Um, Jingles are very, very interesting things that a lot of people don't understand
Right.
until you actually, hear yourself on the radio for the first time. But
Hmm.
can you tell us about like singing specs, or that's what I learned them as being, singing the specs, which are kind of like demos, and
Right.
then having that demo actually be good enough for the client to say, let's put it on. What is that like? Like somebody say, hey,
It's
are you working with an ad agency at that point, or are you
No,
working with the
actually,
studio?
I'm just connected directly. I started through, like I said, Johnny Casella. He used to be a sax player for Mellencamp. Unfortunately, passed in a tragic way, way too soon. Um, he brought me in to do some jingles, and back then, that Bill Baker was also there doing jingles, and it was a great community. That's where I met Carl Story, and we did some jingles together. It was the first time I'd gone in, and see, I'm not theory based. I know no theory at all. I can't read music. I mean, I can read as far as knowing the notes are going up and down, but I don't
Mhm.
read music, and it's never become a problem because I have a good ear. So I would go in, and they'd play me the spec, the demo, and then I just go in and record it. And then hopefully it would turn into a final, which several did over at back then at TRC. We did McDonald's, we did 7 Up. McDonald's had just come out. This will age me with the combo meal. They never had the combo meal before, so I was one of the first people to do an ad for a combo meal. Quarter pound with cheese. That's my big line. But and Carl Story was on that, and Chris Stone, as I had mentioned, and Bill Baker, and it was just this really cool community of people that were called in, the kind of the same handful of people to play the instruments, which is where I originally met Dane Clark before he became Mellencamp's drummer. He was just a drummer around town, a great drummer. He played on my demo that I took out to LA before I moved to LA. He's on that, as Rick Bennick and all these other great players. But Alan Johnson over at the Static Shack, which used to be TRC, just gave me the opportunity of a lifetime. And once I started booking them, I just started booking one after another. We did 7 Up. That
Mhm.
helped pay my way to get out to LA and helped me live in LA once I got there, the residuals from that. So there's a big difference between getting a national commercial and a local commercial. Um, Obviously, money wise, but they're really fun to do, especially if they're good. Because when you're a session singer, you never know what you're walking into. Someone hires you to sing on their album, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go do this, and you hear the music, and you're like, oh my god. But you do what you can to help pump it up and add what you can. And it's so much fun when you get a jingle or a session that's really, really good and really well written, because you can't wait to get in and dive
Mhm.
in. But you have to learn how to make those ones that aren't so good good too. And that's where the kind of professionalism comes in. You can't just like, oh, this doesn't sound good. I'm out of here. No, you got to give it your best because you're getting
Right.
paid. And if you want to
Exactly.
continue to work, then you do your best.
When I
And
got
it's
when I got when I got my foot in that door, sometimes the business is pretty brutally honest, and
mm,
one of the producers goes, Sly, you're not that good, but you are available. I told him I can be there if you tell me to be there in an hour and a half. I'll be there, and they go, we have another guy that we normally use, but he can never get here. But you can be here like within 2 hours. So
hey,
I
whatever way you can get in there, get in there.
Exactly. It's like, it's not the talent, it's just being available sometimes, just being
Exactly.
there in the right spot. And I can't tell you the number of times where, okay, well, you're here, let's do another one. And you're
Mhm.
here, let's do a voiceover for this. I mean, it all
Exactly.
kind of goes
Can
together.
roll over.
Yep. And
Just
then we
being
had
in the right
another
place
guy.
at the right time. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we had another guy who was recording an album, a country album. They said, we need you to come in here and sing blah, 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 blah over and over and over again. Okay.
Exactly. And that's what Alan Johnson has done for me over at the Static Shack. He's given me numerous opportunities to work with several artists and sing on several albums. And it's just wonderful relationship I have with him.
Yeah, it's good to have people that you're you work very well with, because it can lead to a whole bunch of success for them and for you. And it's sometimes can be just magic
Mhm.
happenstance. You know,
Yeah,
that's what's so great about it.
exactly.
So besides the jingles, we're going to wrap up here in a minute or two, but I want to ask you, what else are you doing now? I think you've got some other stuff going on in
I do.
Indianapolis.
I do. I've just put a band together recently with some great players in town. It's called Mimi and the Homewreckers. And it's basically that's actually Brass from the Past. No, that's not Brass
Okay.
from the Past. No, that's not that's Flashback Rock Show. No, that's Mimi and the Homewreckers -1. But the one you just showed was Flashback Rock Show, which is a band that I'm in with Dane Clark, who you can see on the far well, it's my left. And his daughter is in the center, Abigail, and she sings as well. And then next to her is Troy Kinnett, who is Mellencamp's keyboard player. And then we have our bass player, Jack, who's wonderful, a great friend of Dane, who's played with him forever. And the back row is myself. And then Eric Skull, who is in my band, Mimi and the Homewreckers. So yeah, Brass from the Past is kind of like a festival band because it's a show. It's a set show.
Yeah.
It's not like just get up and jam some couple songs. It's a set show. We start out with Sgt. Pepper's and we go through, I do a lot of like Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Janis Joplin, Aretha Franklin, stuff like that. But with Mimi and the Homewreckers, I'm finally putting myself in front for a change.
Nice.
And it only took me, I don't want to tell you how many years, but
10 plus. Did it say 10 plus?
but I've got some great players, Eric Skull on guitar, Thomas Brinkley there in the back, very well known in this town, great player. And I've got Mike Kessler on drums. Both I know Thomas and Mike from the Jazz Kitchen, and they're great players. And I've really want to do stuff that's my own.
Mhm.
That's not I don't write, so I hate to say that, but I interpret songs. That's what I feel I do. I'm a song interpreter. So we're doing a lot of blues, a lot of soul, just stuff that I want to do. Instead of I'm still doing kind of, pardon the expression, balls to the wall, kind of screaming here
Mhm.
and then. But I'm also laying back and I'm doing just some singing instead of just screaming all the time. Being that rocks singer. I'm kind of
Mhm.
doing some blues, some more laid back stuff that I'm really enjoying. And I'm loving these guys. We're going to be at the Slippery Noodle here in Indianapolis on December 17th, just to put a little plug in. So if anyone wants to come and check us out, we'll be there on December 17th.
Of 2021. So, because these are
Yes, of this,
going to be
yes.
going in the archives. So I don't want people showing up because where's Mimi and the Homewreckers? You told me they were going to be here. Well, that was a year ago. So
Right.
we don't
Yeah.
want that to happen.
Well,
And
yes.
you're also playing with someone else, right?
Yes, Orvis Kirkman. I love this guy. He's such a great guy. Wonderful guitar player. He works for Blonde Entertainment, mainly here in Indianapolis, which I'm not really affiliated with, but he's just a great guitar player, and we've just really kind of grown together to have our own thing. We really enjoy each other, and we enjoy playing with each other, and people seem to like us. So we play a couple times a month over at this place in Indianapolis called Murphy's Craft House, and sometimes we'll pick up a gig here or there. But he's just a really nice, comfortable person to play with. Just have a really good time playing with him.
So I just want to ask you, Mimi, if you were singing 7 nights a week, is there a song that you would want to sing 7 nights a week? Do you have a favorite song that you go, I just love singing this song?
That's hard because my favorite songs change, as the years go by. Like, I used to love Chain of Fools. If you ask me to sing that now, I will strangle you. But because you just get tired of singing, Lately I've been doing Can't Find My Way Home by Steve Winwood and Eric Clapton. I really enjoy doing that. But as far as like something that I really like singing where I can just open up and let it out, let all the emotion out, would probably be Hurt So Bad by
Mm,
Susan Tedeschi Trucks Band.
right.
It's a great blues tune that just really grabs you by the gut and won't let go.
Hmm.
And I love those kind of songs where I put a lot of emotion into when I'm singing. Sometimes I wonder if it's too much, but hey, I'm just me. So,
Yeah.
I'm in the moment, which is what I try and teach my students as a teacher at School of Rock, which I do now too. Is be in the moment. Stop thinking about singing the song. Just sing the song. Enjoy it. Have fun. That's why we do this, because it's fun, because we enjoy it.
Right, right. Instead of just memorizing the words, and I've got it memorized in a line here, just
Exactly.
try to put your feeling in that. And
Exactly.
is that something you try to share with each one of your students that comes through there? Is that kind of your
Absolutely.
words of wisdom?
I tell them from the start, I don't want to turn out a karaoke singer. If you're my student and your name is Sylvia and you're singing a song by Van Halen, I don't want you to try and sound like David Lee Roth because it's not going to happen. I want you to sound like Sylvia singing a Van Halen song. So what I try and do with my kids, because like I said, I'm not theory based, is just try and build up their confidence, build them up as an individual, as who they are and who they can be as their own singer with their own voice.
Well, fantastic. I'm sure there's going to be some singers going through the School of Rock, and that's in Fishers, right?
Yes. Hmm.
Yep. And how can they get a hold of the school? How does just real quick because we're going to be leaving here in just a minute or two, but
Sure.
School of Rock, how does that work? Kids just
Uh,
parents come in and go, my kid loves to sing. How do we get them
yeah.
to do
Well,
that?
what they do is they come in for a demo, regardless of their instrument or, vocal demos come to me. I have a 30-minute demo with kids. I kind of tell them I'm a voice doctor. Since I'm not theory based, I kind of listen to their voice and hear what they need to do. Um, and then what happens from then is if they sign up, they come to me for the songs that they're assigned, because at School of Rock we teach through songs. We don't put on shows to learn music. We learn music to put on shows. So it's kind of like we throw them right into it. So
Mm-hmm.
they come to me to learn whatever songs they're doing for their theme, and then they go to a rehearsal. And it's a great opportunity. I also do private lessons as well. So if you're interested, you can always contact me through Facebook, or I have my website, mimimapesmccloy.com, but it's only accessible on an iPad, on a laptop. It's
Okay.
not coded for smartphones or anything. But you can always just Google me, contact me. I'm available for private lessons as well here in Indianapolis. Or I teach some kids in California. I just got done teaching a daughter of a friend that was a studio guide back with me in California. So if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I would teach, I would say, what are you, nuts? But I found that I can teach, and I've really enjoyed watching the kids grow with my help. It's something that I never even thought was possible, but it's very fulfilling. So
It is. It is. That's the thing where you can say, wow, I remember when that one was 12 years old and boy, oh boy,
exactly.
excellent, excellent. And if
And
you can just contribute a little bit to that success, I mean, it gets you right there, right?
it really does. It's all the feels. It's all the feels.
So what we'll do is we'll go ahead if you want to, we can put the information down below, in the information on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
Make sure that you like our YouTube. I'm talking to everybody here because I know you already do like the YouTube
Oh,
channel
okay.
and you subscribe. So if you're watching tonight or watching on this replay, make sure you hit subscribe and hit like, and then you'll keep up with all of what's going on here, and we can keep up with where Mimi's going and how you can get in touch with her to do some private lessons or that sort of thing. So, Mimi, I want to thank you so much. I am so happy
Absolutely.
that we finally got to talk face to face because when you were going to the bathroom at Jake's, I was spinning records. So That's why it never happened.
Funny. Well,
I
I'm so
didn't.
glad, Sly. It's been a lot of fun talking with you and rehashing all these memories, and I really appreciate that you're even interested. I mean, that's awesome.
There's a
So
lot
thank
of interest,
you
a
so
lot
much.
of interest of what's going on in the past. You know what, who was where, why were they there, how long were they there, what can we
Right.
find from them? I mean, the one thing I'm going to leave on this point is there's a
Mhm.
lot of things that I wish we would have had cell phones for back in the 80s. And I'm glad
Mhm.
there are no cell phones back in the 80s because
Thank you very much.
right, there's a lot of stuff we didn't get to see. And thank goodness there was a lot of stuff we didn't get to see.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. Thank you,
All right,
Sly, so
Mimi.
much. And
Thank
thank
you.
you everyone out there that hopefully is watching this. So thank you for your interest.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So I'm going to say so long and I'm going to wrap things up here, Mimi. So once again, thank you. And that does it for this installment of the Indiana Rock Machine. My name is Sly Rose. I am your host. Join us on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. And we are here all the time. If you ever get bored, just download our video and catch us on the next one. So thanks, everybody. And we will see you next time.